A year after the Russian poet Joseph Brodsky was born, the Germans began their 900-day siege of Leningrad. Carrion rats soon ruled the alleys, and starved inhabitants dropped dead in the streets. As Brodsky began learning language, his ears were filled with the sounds of war: bombs, sirens, gunfire, deprivation, and death. One could speculate that these sounds found their way into his poetry, whose cadences are forceful and urgent. And of this place of fantastical buildings, Brodsky said, the lower the thermometer falls, the more abstract the city looks. -25 centigrade is cold enough, but the temperature keeps falling, as though having done away with people, river, and buildings. It aims for ideas, for abstract concepts. With the white smoke floating above the roofs, the buildings along the embankments more and more resemble a stalled train bound for eternity. The gray reflecting rivers and canals that constantly filmed the city taught him more about infinity and stoicism than mathematics and Zeno. Everything can change in Petersburg, except its weather and its light, pale and diffuse. This is a city where it's somehow easier to endure loneliness, because the city itself is lonely. In the 1960s, Stalin was dead, and the great terrors were thought to be over. During Khrushchev's regime, Russia enjoyed a brief political thaw. The intellectuals and artists relaxed a bit, perhaps too much. In 1963, the arrest of Joseph Brodsky woke everyone up. The only one who did not protest was Solzhenitsyn, who said all Russian writers should suffer a little. Brodsky's friend, the great poet Anna Akhmatova, remarked prophetically, "The KGB will make him a martyr. He will only become more important by this action."
Его стихи преисполнены прощания, так или иначе прощания с этим миром, который ему бесконечно нравится и заряжает его энергией. Но вместе с тем он хочет быть от него свободным, он хочет в нем раствориться, он хочет найти такую в нем точку, где он видит, а его не видно. Он хочет быть невидимкой.
An only child, devoted to his parents, Joseph would soon be forced to depart from them and the city he loved. He would see neither of them again. Joseph Brodsky stood on the shore of his country of exile and looked eastward towards Leningrad, where his parents still slept in their confined bed, in their confined room, in their confined lives. He had only been in exile for 16 days when he was interviewed by the BBC.
I'm not a typical Russian, and I'm not a spectator of all these changes or stability. The level is more or less the same. Already 16 days out of my home, I couldn't see a serious difference.
And your own poetic inspiration, will this survive, cut off from its roots, now you've left Russia?
I hope, but I have nothing now, especially this moment, except the hopes.
I mean, in some ways he liked the permissiveness of the atmosphere that he encountered here, but in another way it didn't suit his temperament. Joseph was a fastidious, very tidy writer. He became the most articulate spokesman for want of a better word, we call formal poetry.
Against all probability, the voice of a Russian Jewish poet pierced through the universal noise and was recognized in the world as a reminder of the hierarchy in arts and letters, a hierarchy above the fashions, follies, and politics of the day. When accepting his award, he said, "Language and presumably literature are things that are more ancient and inevitable, more durable than any form of social organization. Then in 1991, Brodsky was named the Poet Laureate of the United States, following his friend Mark Strand in this illustrious position.
There was some backlash amongst poets in this country to his being named Poet Laureate, and I think very unfairly. Joseph was an American citizen, and I had to remind some poets, he's an American. And if you're going to deny him the Poet Laureateship, then you're going to deny people who have come to this country, immigrants, equal status.
Brodsky was extremely sensitive to the nuances of his two languages. He said that when you're translating, you try to preserve the sheen, the paleness of the leaves, but weaknesses have a certain function in a poem, a strategy to pave the reader's way to the impact of this or that line.
Birds flying high above the retreating army, why do we suddenly turn and head toward our enemy, contrary to the clouds? We are not yet defeated, are we? True, we are scattered, but we still have some energy. Your tunes will be blown out of the sky too by the screaming westerly. We commit them to memory, which is a larger country. Nobody knows the future, but there is always yesterday. Yeah, but our lifespan's shorter. There is no tomb or pyre for our kind, but chamomile, clover, chicory, thyme. Your valedictory runs fire, fire, fire. We are less comprehensible. That's why we need a victory.